like it's raining. Don't need a microphone. Once, when I was challenged to name my top 10 favorite songs, I expressed to my friend a desire to be able to erase from my memory all of my favorite songs, so that I might have the experience of hearing them again for the very first time. It seemed to me that if I listened to a favorite song too often, I might run the risk of wearing it out. I was afraid that eventually it wouldn't move me in quite the same way. I would still want, maybe even need to hear it, but the emotional intensity simply wouldn't be as high. With every listen, I might be searching for that magic and it would be gone. Now, I know that that is not true of the great songs. Those are the ones that sound new all the time. As an only child of 2 working parents, after school, except when I had rehearsals or music lessons, I had the house to myself until 6 p.m. And I felt free to help myself to my parents' hi-fi and their LP collection. And as I got older, to help myself to the liquor cabinet too. They actually pair well together. Broadway musicals, Nat King Cole, Dinah Washington, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Rosemary Clooney, these were the artists that informed my musical tastes. I simply loved filling the silence of our house with these recordings. I sang along. In fact, I learned to sing while attempting to reproduce their sounds. Bobby Darin's album, That's All, was released in 1959 when I was 5 years old. After the original Broadway cast album for My Fair Lady, it was my favorite LP during my pre-Beatles grade school years. That's All opens with Darin's famous version of Mac the Knife. But the second track always stopped me dead and filled me with a wistfulness that I could barely grasp as a child. That song was titled Beyond the Sea. And although it was a swinging tune, it somehow broke my little young heart, which was a brand new sensation. I loved it, but it frightened me as well. Nostalgia, like chest pain, is often a sign of a deeper problem. I know this, and I tried to remind myself of that last week as I flew to the place of my childhood. I was studying the patterns of eastern Washington from 28,000 feet, and they seemed very familiar to me. I know this land. I recognize and even acknowledge that a place with no water is scarce. So why would I flee Spokane the afternoon of my graduation from high school and head for a port city? Well, I chose Boston because it was so far away from Spokane and for the Boston Bay and the salty air and the ships. In the 1970s, I lived in an apartment with sliding glass doors that opened onto white sand and the Pacific Ocean. And I could see Catalina on a clear day, and there weren't that many clear days in 1970s Los Angeles. I left LA for Manhattan, where I lived 8 blocks from the Hudson River. I could sit at the Chelsea Piers and look at the shimmery, silvery surface and smell the water and cruise the guys. I would ride the Staten Island ferry and I'd stand at the bow singing Don't Rain on My Parade. In Seattle, circa 1981 to 2001, I lived in a bungalow that was just 4 blocks away from Lake Union and the shipping canal. And again, I could smell the salt water. I loved the mournful sound of the foghorns and the toots from the tugs. In 2001, my husband and I had a collective nervous breakdown, and we up and moved to Portland, Oregon. At first I was wary. Where was my water? But standing naked on a beach at Sauvie Island and watching those huge cargo ships make their way up the mighty Columbia, I realized that this sort of does feel like the ocean. In the early 1990s, the parental units gave me, very sweetly, a cassette that they had made, a mixed tape of songs that I had embraced in my early childhood. One of those songs was Beyond the Sea. My mother reminded me that as a 6-year-old, I would sing it for company and accompanied by a little dance that I would do during the bridge. The song's first incarnation was La Mer. It was written by French composer, lyricist, songman, showman Charles Trenet in 1945. He wrote it for another French singer. And in 1946, Trenet recorded his very own version, and it became an unexpected international hit, and it has become a chanson classic and a jazz standard. Trenet claimed that he wrote the lyrics as a poem when he was 16 years old, but it was many years before he could come up with a melody for it. In 1943, a tune came to him while he was traveling on a train, and he was gazing out the window at the Mediterranean Sea. He jotted it down on a piece of paper, and in the afternoon, he worked out all the details with his pianist, and that evening they performed it in front of an audience, and nobody cared. But over the years, that song has become very popular throughout the world, with plenty of prominent artists recording their own versions. Besides the original in French, the song was also recorded in several other languages. The English version was titled Beyond the Sea, and it became particularly popular and became the signature song for Darren. In 1966, there were already 100 different recordings of La Mer, and when Trenet left this world in 2001, there were more than 4,000 different recordings of it, with over 100 million copies sold. The English language version is not really a translation, by the way. It's described as like a wistful look at lovers who have been separated. But the French version is actually, literally, about the sea. In 2001, the Oregonian's music critic, David Stabler, did a wonderful piece on funeral music. In closing, he requested that readers send him their 5 choices for songs to be played at their own memorial. My submission was published the next Friday, as I suspected that it might. And of the 5, 3 of those songs were about the sea, and all 5 of the songs were about water. They were Lyle Lovett's If I Had a Boat, Once in a Lifetime by Talking Heads, Shiver Me Timbers from Tom Waits, Antonio Carlos Jobim's The Waters of March, and of course, La Mer. Tonight, our host's instructions for the evening were to write about a song that terrifies and inspires. But I am not really afraid of things. It's not really my shtick being afraid of things. And I'm not afraid of spiders or snakes or heights or tight spaces or death or public speaking, obviously. In October 2013, I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was immediately hospitalized. I wasn't afraid. I was a little afraid because I didn't have health insurance. But within 36 hours, it was explained to me that I would be undergoing brain surgery the next day. That next day, as I was prepped for surgery, a surgical nurse shaved my head, and the attending physician drew a map on my skull using marking pens. I was wheeled into the OR and introduced to the team, including the anesthesiologist. Then we all waited, and we waited, and we waited. The scheduled time came and went, and the anesthesiologist made the call that if the neurosurgeon was not in place in 5 minutes, they were going to scrub my launch. I told jokes to keep everyone's mood light. I tell really good jokes, using voices and anecdotes. Everybody was laughing, and at the very last moment, the hopelessly handsome surgeon breezily made his entrance. He leaned down, and in my ear, he whispered, "I usually choose the music that is played while I work, but because you held down the fort before I got here, today you get to choose. What song would you like us to play as I open up your skull?" I requested La Mer. And without missing a beat, he asked the original French or an American cover version, as if he had all of them on his iPad. So there was that very real chance that the very last thing that I was ever going to hear in my life would be Charles Trenet singing La Mer. And as I counted backwards from 100 as the propofol was administered, I reached 97, and then I felt all at sea. Before you think I'm too much of a geezer, I want you kids to know that I have hip-hop in my collection, country music in my collection, blues.
It's true. It's true.